So another common topic of conversation in my professional training program is how do I work with a client who's dealing with a medical restriction around food? In other words, how do I work with a client who needs to restrict certain foods or certain types of foods in order to manage a blood sugar issue, for instance, or a digestive issue, a hormonal issue, really any kind of weight neutral medical concern that may actually require that a client change what they're eating. So this is obviously a huge conversation. This is something I get into quite a bit of depth on in my training program. And I will say that different strokes for different types of issues that you might be dealing with. So for instance, how you work with somebody around a digestive issue or an allergy may be very different than how you work with somebody around blood sugar issues, for instance. That being said, there are a few things that I like to check in with my clients around before we get started with making any kind of adjustments to what they're eating for weight neutral health reasons. So the first thing that I always check in with my clients around is going to sound pretty obvious, but just really checking in to make sure that this is a truly weight neutral desire and that diet mentality isn't kind of sneaking in through the back wings. Obviously, we are all susceptible to diet mentality kind of creeping in through the back door just because of the ubiquity of diet culture around us, not to mention the compulsive nature of dieting that so many folks who struggle with food deal with on a regular basis, especially in early recovery. So something to just be aware of first and foremost when you're dealing with medical restrictions, just taking inventory of where diet mentality may be influencing a client's process here. Number two, I always like to check in with my clients about how they've tried to deal with this particular medical issue without using restrictions. So culturally, we're very used to just slapping on food restrictions to manage, every kind of health issue under the sun. If you Google how to deal with XYZ health concern, you're probably going to find some page that tells you to try cutting this out or try cutting that out when cutting this or that out isn't actually necessary. Food restrictions aren't risk-free. They are risky even when used in weight-neutral ways. So make sure you're checking in with your clients about what their options are for how to deal with this particular issue before just kind of running in with the bulldozer and adding in food restrictions when they're not necessary. Lastly, I always like to check in with my clients about how prepared they are to fail at attempting a specific medical restriction, right? So regardless of whether or not a client is pursuing a medical restriction for weight neutral reasons or any other reason, there's always a chance that they won't be able to maintain it perfectly. And quite frankly, they probably won't. So you want to really make sure that your client is prepared for that your client is able to live in the gray around health, that they've gotten far enough along in their recovery that they can be imperfect in their health choices. Otherwise, they're really risking falling into diet binge cycling patterns or losing their sanity in some way at the hands of some attempt at a medical restriction. So those are the three things that I like to check in with clients around before we get started coaching around a medical restriction. If you want to go deeper on the how-tos of working with different kinds of medical restrictions in a non-diet, anti-diet way, definitely make sure to put in an application for my professional training program. Applications go out via email on Thursday only to folks on the wait list for the Center for Weight Neutral Coaching. So make sure to get on that wait list. Link is in my bio.